Hello and welcome to another After Action report. 3 firsts for the channel today. We're moving over to Fortress Italy. I'll be playing as the Americans, and this won't be a meeting engagement. This will be my first time on the attack. For those unfamiliar, the attacker gets about 30% more points for the unit selection, which should make for an interesting fight. My opponent, Roughneck57, who I met on the Combat Mission official Discord, will be playing the Wehrmacht on defense. The map is wide, with a mix of wheat fields, orchards and vineyards, along with scattered farmhouses and compounds leading up to the 2 major objectives. The first objective is a large hotel on the northern outskirts of town. The approach looks terrible: a long open road on the left, a vineyard right in front, and a railway station on the right. I'll be referring to this as Objective Hotel. The second objective is the town centre, located to the south of the hotel. It might have a better approach, with buildings and a forest providing cover all the way up to the objective. I have 1 company from an engineer battalion, led by Captain Arose. This unit, which I'll refer to as Able Company, consists of 3 platoons, each equipped with a Browning 30 cal, a sniper team, and a forward observer, 3 M4A1 Shermans, and 3 Stuarts for armoured support. Far to the south there's Baker Company, commanded by Captain Horner. It consists of 2 rifle platoons, each with 2 bars per squad and 2 bazookas per platoon, giving them more firepower than the engineers, 2 medium mortar teams for indirect fire support, and lastly I have 4 off-map 240mm M1 howitzers, incredibly powerful artillery pieces that make up a huge portion of my force value. How well I use them could make or break the battle. For the plan, we're going to avoid the centre of the map entirely. There's just too much open space, and with the objectives located in the north and south, attacking through the middle would only make it easier for the enemy to surround me, especially if they're concentrated around the hotel, railway station or town centre. The much larger Able Company will lead the attack. There's a reverse slope along the woodland that should let us get in close without exposing ourselves. From there, we'll use our armour's full firepower to shell the hotel and railway station. Once I'm confident the enemy is suppressed, the engineer platoons will move in and assault the hotel complex. The display of firepower, armour and manpower should hopefully convince the Germans that my entire force is pushing on the right flank, drawing their troops away from the town centre to reinforce the hotel. Once the hotel is secured, Baker Company will launch a surprise attack, and together both companies should be able to pincer attack the final objective. We start by deploying smoke to cover Able Company's advance across the fields. For now, everyone holds position. I've learned the hard way that failing to spot on the first turn can lead to early casualties. Luckily, this time, all is quiet. At the 2-minute mark, Able Company moves out. The smoke was well placed, but I dropped it too early for the men to take full advantage of it. With the current wind conditions, it is already dispersing faster than I'd like. I also realised the map is large enough to make good use of trucks. However, I had to cut as much as possible in the force selection just to afford those 2 40mm howitzers. First platoon Stuart spots some German foxholes behind a hedgerow on the main road leading to the hotel. It then comes under fire, likely from an AT gun positioned at the rear end of the hotel, facing down the road. At the same time, a Stug is spotted in an orchard on a hill to the west of the hotel. Its position is concerning because the reverse slope here gives it a perfect vantage point to target my armour as we advance. A Sherman is ordered forward to fire on the bushes where the foxholes were spotted. Shortly after, the tank commander is taken out by a sniper. The Sherman quickly pops smoke and reverses. One advantage of deploying engineers is their demolition charges, which let me create a new entrance into this compound. Concerned about the Stug, I ordered the Sherman to blanket the orchard with smoke shells to block its line of sight.
Battalion calling platoon commander. Target left 200, add 120.
At the 5-minute mark, the first 240mm shells slam into the town centre with devastating effect. Meanwhile, I begin targeting mortars behind the hotel, hoping to take out that AT gun covering the main road. A shell, either from an AT gun or a tank, takes out 4 men from 1st Platoon's 2nd Squad, leaving the survivors shaken and unresponsive to orders. I still have no visual on the source. While waiting for the second volley of 240mm shells, I realise I've made a critical mistake. I had set the guns to light bombardment, meaning the fire mission will take up to 3 hours to complete, resulting in just 1 shell every 6 minutes. I quickly have a forward observer radio back to command to cancel the order, but this delay puts the entire attack on hold. Despite my best efforts to keep the Stug's vision blocked, it manages to land a shell on one of my Shermans in the woods. The round hits a sandbag and crumples against the hull, but a fragment of metal must have struck the commander as he retreats inside the tank, now wounded. First Platoon's Browning sets up and begins firing at the hotel windows, trying to pick off or suppress any defenders. Able Company is now just a vineyard away from taking the hotel. The main road to the west is still a no-go, blocked by a machine gun emplacement and an AT gun covering the approach. The left flank is also risky, with too many buildings providing firing positions for the Germans. The least worst option seems to be a direct sprint across the vineyard, with the tanks laying down suppressive fire on the hotel to keep the enemy machine guns at bay. Fortunately, there's a natural defilade here, a perfect trench to stage the assault from. The 3rd Platoon Stewart, which I thought was well concealed, takes a direct hit from a Stug. The shell kills the driver and front machine gunner instantly. Before I can react, the Stug reverses back into the dust. With their tank now disabled, the remaining 2 crew members bail out. I lose another Sherman as the Germans reveal they have a second Stug, this one closer to the objective. The moment I run out of mortars, I launch the attack. The armour moves up to lay down fire on the hotel, while the infantry makes a desperate dash across to the next field. 3rd Platoon takes the worst of the casualties, mostly from one of the Stugs. I'm struggling to get a Sherman into position to return fire. I finally get a spot on the Pak 40. German riflemen and a machine gun in the train station open fire on 2nd Platoon's machine gun team, cutting them down before they can reach the safety of the ditch. At the same time, one of the Stugs advances. At this point, Able Company's fighting strength is severely depleted. Desperate to turn the tide, I order the remaining men to sprint across the vineyard, hoping that if I can just get boots inside the hotel, we might still have a chance. I take a gamble with 2nd Platoon Stuart, sending it wide on the left flank to get into position where it can suppress the Germans at the train station. One of the Stugs advances a little too far and gets spotted by a Sherman commander. I'm not sure what I was thinking with this attack on the main road. 2nd Platoon loses a squad as they try to scramble through the bushes. A rifleman fires a grenade through a ground floor window of the hotel, taking out at least 3 Germans. It's satisfying to finally get some confirmed kills, but these trades don't feel even. I just have to hope this attack is doing its job of pulling the enemy forces away from the town. Second Platoon Stuart is taken out by a Panzerschreck from the train station. I'm surprised it managed to hit from that distance. With the Stuart knocked out, the heavy machine gun on the train station ground floor is no longer suppressed. As a result, an attack I'd planned for the same turn goes badly. I try to maintain the pressure, but the Germans have too many vantage points firing on my advancing troops. With manpower dwindling and the situation slipping out of control, Able Company goes for a Hail Mary attack. First, I move the 2 remaining Shermans into the open to blast the Germans holding down the train station. At the same time, every last able-bodied man from Able Company makes a desperate sprint across the vineyard, attempting to storm the hotel. An engineer lands a solid rifle grenade through the hotel's front-facing window, but the intense firefight proves too much for some Americans and they begin to rout. I lose a 3rd Sherman to the Germans' 2nd Stug, which has now pushed down the hill. The Germans start mortaring the vineyard, throwing Able Company into chaos and scattering the remaining troops. I make one last push for the hotel, but morale is crumbling. One incredibly brave and incredibly reckless rifle section from 2nd Platoon ignores orders and charges around the brick wall straight into the German backline. They're instantly cut down. For the first time in my combat mission career, I actually managed to convince an abandoned tank crew to get back inside. Only the driver and front machine gunner are left to operate it, but it's something. The two 40mm howitzers finally resumed their bombardment, though I'm not sure how effective they'll be at this stage. I have to assume the Germans have already shifted out of the town centre, convinced that my entire force is focused on the hotel. The original plan, securing the hotel with Able before launching a pincer attack on the town centre with Baker, has failed to achieve its first objective. However, that doesn't mean the battle is lost. I'll pull back what's left of Able Company into a defensive position where they can take potshots at the hotel and keep the enemy guessing, making them think I'm about to launch another attack. Baker Company is now on its own to take the town centre. I can only hope I've lured my opponent into a false sense of security about his flank. He definitely won't be expecting me to have kept an entire company in reserve. It's all up to them now. Baker's approach has some solid cover from the buildings and the foliage, so I plan to keep them as far left as possible to reduce the chance of them being spotted too early. They'll move through these houses and capture the town quickly before the Germans can reposition their troops. The attack is going well, with Baker Company quickly pushing back the unprepared and outnumbered enemy. Up until now, the danger-close nature of this howitzer bombardment was a deliberate choice. Desperate times called for extreme measures. However, a shell soon lands directly on a building with an entire American platoon inside. By some miracle, the building doesn't collapse and no one is killed. I quickly have Baker Company HQ radio in to ceasefire. Inside this building, a German HQ unit has surrendered. They have a radio, so it's likely a company HQ. The Germans remaining stuck made it to the south of town faster than I expected. E Company's first platoon fires a bazooka, but the rocket explodes off the Stug's skirts. At the very end of the turn, the Stug somehow misses the bazooka carrier, instead killing a man lying on the ground behind him. At the start of the next turn, the bazooka fires again, this time disabling the tank. A few moments later, we see the tank commander jump out, but he doesn't survive for long. Meanwhile, the battle in the town centre continues as we push further in, clearing house by house. I make an interesting spot, the German battalion HQ, but he's a few streets back. The fighting gets way too close for comfort between the tightly packed buildings. One man, in a moment of desperation, decides to fire his bazooka through a window. Definitely not recommended. Meanwhile, over at the hotel, the remaining forces of Able Company are holed up in a defilade. They're not entirely useless. Thanks to their position, the Germans can't leave the hotel to support the town centre. Although Baker Company still outnumbers the Germans, their manpower is limited. I push my opponent for a conditional ceasefire, demanding they withdraw their troops from the town objective. Regular viewers of this channel will know that my infantry attacks haven't always gone smoothly, so I was really pleased with how well Baker Company's assault worked out, especially considering the original pincer plan didn't materialise. With the Germans agreeing to the ceasefire, my troops move into the town centre with little resistance, bringing the battle to a close. The final result of this battle should have been a draw, but neither my opponent nor I realised that the hotel was only worth a minor objective, so the game counted my occupation of the town centre as a win. Roughneck 57 was a pleasure to play against. I really enjoyed this match and I was happy to try something different than a usual meeting engagement.